It was about youths and women at the just concluded Africa Food Systems Forum in Kigali, Rwanda. And the whole idea is to find a way to ensure food systems that are sustainable in the face of climate change, digitalization, and all of the evolution experienced at the moment. On the program today, we'll be taking a look at that. And of course, we do have two personalities who will be joining us virtually on the program. The first is an agriculturist who is going to be joining us from Kano. Joel Wamba is an agricultural consultant and, of course, the lead Joel Solutions. A very good morning to you, Joel.
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
Well, we also do have a nutritionist who is the National Publicity Secretary for Nutrition Society of Nigeria, Olushola Malomo. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. I was the former National Publicity Secretary of the Nutrition Society of Nigeria.
Okay, so I think we need to check out Olushola's audio, but then there's some key discussions that we're going to be looking at. But then let me also let you know that I have Miss Blessing Ehiche right here with me, and would look at the background of this. What first and foremost is the idea of having a food systems forum. Of course, the team here is delivering food systems transformation in a digital and climate era. And if you had to put that in perspective, I mean, the later part of that topic in perspective of the team, climate change, digitalization, that's a subject that's on the lips of a lot of persons. Yes, the world is going digital, and yet we're struggling with the issue of climate change. Yet people have to eat. I mean, it couldn't have been more timely than now to talk about how to deliver food systems that will be sustainable. So this forum was put together, or, seeks to foster dialogue, collaboration, and innovation to drive transformative change in the way food is produced. Let's give some background to it, like I said earlier on, the idea of having the forum in the first place. Joel, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. All right. So, sometime 10 years ago, there was the Malabo Agreement, which brought leaders from across Africa together. And in that conference, there was some kind of agreement. Hey, climate is changing. A lot of things are happening. However, the government is not moving at the pace with which a lot of things are moving in Africa. So one of the first things that needed to be addressed was funding. And in that, about 10 years ago, in that agreement, it was viewed that at least every country in Africa has to give at least 10% of our budget to agriculture, to finance agriculture, which makes it attractive. And then, it's easy to drive in innovation and a lot into it now. That's actually the background from which the AFS began to take effect. So, unfortunately, even until for last year, it was discovered that no country in Africa has been able to budget up to 10% of our budget into agriculture. So this AFS is coming in to put a lot, because once the funding comes, like they always say, cash is king. So once the funding comes in, innovation can come in, and then you can drive and pursue with the latest trend in agriculture. So basically, this was the foundation to the African Food System Conference, Forum, that held this year in Kigali, where you bring in, and the focus majorly is about the youth population and the women population, because unfortunately or fortunately, we seem to be having a very high rate of youth compared to what we used to have before. And then the female population is far more than the male population. So if you don't give attention to the larger population, we're going to have a food crisis. We already are in serious food crisis, which is known by the pricing system that we're seeing, but what is coming will be worse. So this actually is what bettered the food system forum, the African Food System Forum that we're seeing. Thank you.
All right, I do believe that Olushola's audio is perfect right now. So I'm going to ask Olushola, this forum had in focus women and youth. What role specifically do women and youth have to play when we talk about food transformation in Africa?
Thank you very much for having me. I believe my audio is better now. I was the former National Police Secretary of the Nutrition Society of Nigeria. When we look at the role women and children play in the food system, we discover that from cultivation to distribution and marketing, we see gates in which women play a very vital role. From planting, harvesting, post-harvesting, even and processing. Even when we talk about marketing of some of these agricultural products, you see that we have women within the supply chain going to the farmers to purchase some of these food items, then getting them to the market where it is being retailed to retailers who thereabout get the food to our table for the final consumption. Uh, the issue of financing cannot be overemphasized at this particular moment. We need to empower women. We need to empower them so that they will be able to increase their capacity, their current capacity. Most of what we have is subsistence. We have it in, but when we have more finance, access to finance will increase their capacity because what's going to happen next year? I don't know. Because currently, within our farming environment, and well, the August break have been so long, and cultivation processes that
There seems to be a glitch there with the connection with Olushola. When
yeah,
that is resolved, we continue the conversation with him. In the meantime, I'd like Joel to respond to this. Women and youth at the helm of this forum, talking about African food systems transformation. Why is it important to bring them in? Why is it important to focus on them?
Thank you, Blessing. Um, with the population burst we're having and seeing across Africa, well, in the world actually, we've seen that over 50% of our active populations are youths between the age of 18 and 35. And then also we're seeing that the population, the ratio of male to female, the female ratio is growing out of hand. Now, if we don't find a way to deal with the the age bracket and the gender that seems to be increasing the more, what will happen is that we will have 3 persons trying to produce food for 100 persons, which is impossible. Now, if that once that happens, obviously everyone is going to, I mean, it becomes survival of the fittest because they won't be able to produce enough. Now, looking at that population bust and looking at the area of advantage that we're having, it was important to bring in and focus more on the youth because it looks like the youth want to go for something more attractive. Now, how do we make agriculture very attractive so that this population bust that we're having, this high ratio of the youths and the women we're having, can also be actively involved in food production, which will help to meet the agenda of the UN goal, SDG goal, right, which is fighting against hunger and all of that. So this is why it's important, very, very important, as a matter of fact, to bring in both the youths and the women into agriculture, find where they fit in, and then make this very attractive and easy to do in the agricultural space in Africa. Thank you.
All right, so Joel, let me just go at you with these thoughts of mine as well. We're talking about agricultural development. We're talking about food sustainability. And of course, this is an era where we have digitalization. And so the question is, how can we leverage on digital technologies to improve agricultural productivity? Because it just feels like we're still behind. We have countries, United States, who have food banks, who have silos, large silos, and there are certain foods that are there all year round. I mean, in season and out of season, and it feels as though we're not keeping up. Now, is the solution digitalization? And if yes, how can we leverage on digital technology to improve agricultural productivity, reduce waste, and enhance market access for smallholder farmers? feels as though Joel Wamba, we have a disruption in the connection, but then blessing, I mean, food is important. I cannot overemphasize on
I
how,
can't help but laugh the way you say food is important.
yes, I
Yes.
mean, you go and you want to buy a plate of rice right now. It's unfortunate that a man, I mean, came to a booker where, I was at, and he was asking for rice worth 400 naira.
500 naira.
400
naira, okay?
And when he saw the quantity, it was a misnomer. He asked for beans worth 200 naira. And he felt like a sprinkle of sawdust on wood. That's how the beans looked on the rice. And he looked, and I shook my head because I could understand clearly the heartbeat pounding at that point. Who do we take it out on?
That's the Nigerian situation.
Yes.
And possibly the situation in some African countries.
Exactly.
All right.
Food is expensive. And that's because commodities like rice are not produced locally. Even the local products are not enough to feed. And so that arrangement is not sustainable. Now you go to buy rice, they ask you, okay, what do you want? Nigerian, foreign, foreign, local rice. I mean, what's all this classification? Who graded it this way?
I think it depends on the finishing of the produce, how fine it is in terms of milling.
How much is the local rice?
The local rice, sometimes the milling is not done very nicely. It comes with stones and some other things that you wouldn't like to eat.
How much is the local rice?
It depends.
Okay, I'm going far with rice.
Okay.
For some people, rice is like luxury.
Rice ordinarily in Nigeria is like staple. There are persons who will tell you, I don't eat this, I don't eat that, but almost everybody eats rice. So the demand for consumption of rice is very high. You understand why the price sometimes will go high. But the production, like you've already said, the local production is not sufficient to satisfy the demand. And so you have the importation of foreign rice. And at that importation, you also have different quality of rice.
Okay.
So that's why the sellers have categorized it to, do you want local rice? Do you want Nigerian foreign? Nigerian foreign meaning the one that is processed like the foreign rice. You don't have stones in it. You don't have dirt and some other things that you wouldn't like to eat in it. So that's the Nigerian foreign. Then you want the foreign depending on the quality of the rice. Do you want foreign? So it depends on the quality of the rice. At the same time, whether it's local, Nigerian foreign, foreign, whatever classification, it's still expensive, going to show that there is food insecurity in Nigeria as well as some other African countries. Hence the need for this forum to address the food systems that we have. And good thing that Joel is back to look at why we've had very poor produce in terms of the demand. The production of most of the farm produce is not enough to satisfy the demand. One would have expected that, knowing that we have arable land in Nigeria and many parts of Africa in abundance, and we have a young population, we should not have issues of food insecurity. What are the methods that are still being used leading to low yield that we need to change? How can we change this? Having a forum is not enough to talk. What are the steps that should be taken to follow up some of these things that have been discussed to ensure that when the person that Temple Barra met at the restaurant goes next time to buy a plate of rice, he asks for 400 naira worth of rice, for instance, he's overfed after eating it and not feeling like this can't even satisfy my young child?
The reality is that we have a problem in Africa. That's the truth, because we still use a lot of old systems and old technologies. We still have in few rural communities, people not understanding what it means to get the different kind of seeds, right? Down from the foundation, breeder foundation, certified into grains. We have where people recycle grains. Now, literally, that loses its yield potential. So there's difference between seed and grain. The best you can do to grain is to eat it, and the worst you can do to seed is also to eat it. But the best you can do to seed is to plant it, because you keep planting seed and then you get grains. Now these are part of the things. Two is that somehow it's believed there's still some places where if you tell them you're going to study agriculture in the university, it feels like you're going to waste your time, because they tell you before you were born, we've been farming and we know how to farm. But unfortunately, we know how to farm and we've not been able to optimize yield per hectare for obvious reasons. We have the issue of inputs. We have the effect of climate. We also have the issue of planting distance. We have the issue of the variety of seeds and multiplicity of factors, which has helped a lot. Quite a number of things have happened. But back to the foundational issue. Rather than also, there are two focus we must have if we want to hit our food sufficiency, both in Nigeria and in Africa. One is improving the yield potential. So for every seed, when you buy a seed, there are recommendations of the yield potential of that very seed. It means that if they say, oh, this seed can produce 2 metric tons, and you produce 0.5 metric ton, even though you produce something, but you have produced far lower than what is supposed to be produced, which could be a product of other systems that you use, no input, or you are approaching it the wrong way, which is also a problem. And the other part, which is what we have been focusing more in Africa, which is good, but at the end of the day, is also very bad. We're improving and increasing the size of farm we use. So before, we used to farm about 40 million hectares. Right now in Nigeria, we do about 80 million hectares of land. Yes, we see there's a time where this increases, but the reality is that we're dying, because yes, we see the increase, and the increase is because we're doing more land, not because we have been able to harness and be optimal or be more efficient and effective with the ones we currently have. And then we also have the issue where once it's rain fed, everybody hits the farm. And then when it's dry season, like in the north, we have close to 6 to 8 months dry spell in some states. No one food is produced, and humans must keep eating. So these are the multiplicity of factors that has to be given attention to. And I'm sure that with this irrigation, a lot will change. I think there's a lot we can do. Like you rightly said, it's not about speaking, it's about implementation. But also, if the people don't know what to implement, they will never be able to do so. I think there has to be a balance. Like we always say, a perfectly planned activity is 50% successful. But that doesn't end it. But if you don't plan, you literally fail 50% because you don't even know what to implement. So these two must be matched, must be very strategic. But yes, it's good that we're beginning to take the initiative as Africans for Africa to see how we can. Very beautiful report came up in last forum in Kigali. And I think that will stir other countries and stir other people. At least we saw collaboration between two countries and how much that is helping. Everyone is taking agriculture very seriously, or else with your money you will still die, because hunger doesn't respect money. It has you must put it. What you must give it is not money; it must be food. So I think there are multiple things we can do, and putting systems, engaging the private sector, and for Africa, for us to get this to work very well. We obviously have a core system. How we manage once it's something in government is why I still strongly believe in the private sector play, where you bring it and balance it, right? When the private sector comes in and they see that there's a profiting in it, then they give their life to profit as much as they drive profitability and engage the MSMEs and all of that. Things will change. We're seeing those changes in progresses from the private sector system. For instance, you go to a company, you see that the average yield per hectare for some crop national, that's the government, is about 1.5, 1.8. And the private sector is telling you, hey, we're getting 2.5, and they are not joking, they are not lying. It's true. So obviously, these balances must be brought in, and I'm sure once we become serious, and that didn't come out well, not really serious. Once we become very objective in our dealings, both as government, as individuals, and as citizens, and understand what is ahead of us. What is ahead of us is not tomorrow. What is ahead of us is the next 100 years. I'm sure we will focus better. Rather than pursuing the natural resources in the land, only we will also pursue agriculture and not just the minerals. I think that's what I can say about this. Thank you.
All right. So, it feels as though there are a lot of opportunities, in developing a sustainable food system for Nigeria, for. But then what are the challenges? What are the issues that have inhibited this productivity, this transformation? Why have we been stuck at where we are for so long?
Okay. Um, Top on that list on the challenges we have when it comes to food production is financing. I don't want to use the word money, but I mean financing. Financing could come either in cash or in kind, but this has hampered a lot. So you have people who are in the rural community and are willing to I mean, they are real farmers, they want to improve and increase on themselves, but they are not bankable. They don't have what it takes. Their land and properties collateral, I mean, doesn't have papers that they can use to access funds from the bank. And then you also have few uh, commercial banks who want to give loans for agricultural purposes or to rural farmers, except you're big and you have properties in major cities and understand the risk. But now, that's why I said financing is top on that list. Because they couldn't access to get fertilizer, they literally will have to farm and plant and believe in nature to help them. But hey, crop is living; it has to eat. If you don't feed it, it will not grow. So when they don't have the financing to run these inputs, it's a problem. When they don't have the financing, also to take their goods to the market, it's a problem. When they don't have the financing to acquire some technologies and do some other things, it's a problem. So top on that list is financing. And then two is adoption to improve system, innovative ideas, innovative solutions for farming. You go to some places and they will still tell you the way they used to farm 1960, the same way they farm. And if you tell them, they say no. So obviously, training comes in between. Our land tenure system has been an issue, but at least with the system now we accept that this is peculiar to Africa, and so it's better to have people maintain their land, even if it's a 0.1 hectare. Then make that farm the farm of that 0.51 hectare is as efficient as though it's 10 hectares. So once we hit that, so let's find a system to the government will help a lot in this. And the extension system will help a lot. There are people there are research institutes everywhere in Nigeria. So if we're able to do a lot on this, this will help. It will help and help. And then the last thing I want to mention is rather than just dealing with rain-fed system, which is largely less than 3% of the land in Nigeria is uses irrigation. So because we don't have it's quite heavy on the infrastructure, but if we can fix those infrastructure, irrigation and infrastructure, this will help. So these are the challenges we have. It's really terrible. We have youth who are not interested in agriculture because it looks like it's punishment. But I'm glad that a lot of that is changing right now. Agriculture is beginning to employ so much. It's a major addition to the GDP of the nation. So I think that is changing quickly. So, but these and many more are the issues we have when it comes to agriculture in Nigeria and in Africa. Thank you.
All right, this Food Systems Forum was organized under the leadership of the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame. Now, if you look at what Rwanda has done in agriculture, it's a lot compared to what some other African countries are doing. They seem to have achieved some success in certain areas, and they've had an intentional approach in ensuring that the food systems in Rwanda is improved. They've done a lot in food processing. They've also gone to ensure that there is community-based approach in handling some of the issues that farmers have, such as funding, which you have talked about. They've also gone a step ahead to look at enhancing the nutrition of the food that is being produced in Rwanda. Now, looking at some of those critical steps that they've taken, how can other African countries take a leaf from this and implement some of these steps that Rwanda has taken to improve its food systems?
Okay. I think the forum for me was exciting, also very exciting, because you're trying to push these ideas to other African countries, and it looks like you're speaking gibberish. They don't understand what you're saying, or you don't know what you're saying. But at least the entire Africa gathered in Rwanda and saw so much of what's happening. So now they know that it's possible. So the fact that we see it implemented, good leadership, and I'm glad that the government is right in the center of it. Now, with other African countries coming in, we saw ministers of agriculture of different nations, the private sector, very well represented. So the ideas everyone is seeing, I think that for me is the first piece, is that we need to see that this is possible and not feel that it is not possible. People are just saying what is not possible. So I think that for me is the first thing that we're seeing. The second is when we see, we shouldn't just go and then the only story we're telling, this is what we saw in Rwanda, this is what the president is doing, is that now that for everyone who represented, for the governments, policymakers, IGOs, international organizations, and NGOs, and businesses, partners, and all of that who went there, it's now to sit and say, okay, fine, what do we do to change the system? And I expect that most of these organizations will go back to their drawing board and check what they're doing, based on what they've seen, where will you take them to, based on what they're doing, where would they get to. Now, this makes that there has to be a lot of changes. While the private sector is working on changes, the government must also see that and begin to check on the policies. Like one of the things like, increase the budget allocation, right? Put some incentive around some of these things, but with the fact that people have seen so much, it doesn't take anything. There's no government who will speak to Gami right now and say, hey, I like what you guys do. Can we send a delegate from our Ministry of Agriculture to just come and take a tour around you for another 1 week? Peradventure, there are some details they missed, right? They can have that one-on-one conversation. Because if Africa is self-sufficient, if Nigeria can feed Nigerians, if Kenyans can feed Kenyans, if Rwanda can feed Rwandans, if Sierra Leone can feed Sierra Leone, if Egypt can feed Egyptians, then trust me, we're already getting to the point where Africa can be food sufficient. Because that is where the goal has to be. And then we can look at areas of comparative advantage. There are some crops that are excellent in Nigeria. There are some crops that are going to be excellent in Senegal. And then let's push and begin to run this. And then this also bets international trade. Where we won't be struggling, and then we're struggling with the strength of the currency. Agriculture can also do that. I'm glad for the African free trade zones and all of that. But I think this for me is good. I think the first step is here. We're seeing one country implement and is making progress, and they are not ready to stop here. They are willing to go to the end. So other countries, other African countries and leaders must obviously wake up and see that, it's important to give attention to food and nutrition, processing and all of that. Thank you.
Okay, Joel, for a while now, the federal government of Nigeria have been distributing rice as form of palliative, right? And I think in 2020, that's when we had the COVID-19. It was still rice. And so some social media users and netizens are complaining. I mean, why rice? Always distributing rice. But then the angle to which I want to come at this would be how to ensure, food availability. I mean, the food system is what ensures food availability in times of crisis, pandemics, and of course, what we're experiencing now in Nigeria, economic downturn, and then options. Availability of options, not just rice, not just beans, options that people can actually, get nutritional value from.
Okay. Yes. I think I get the complaints. Why rice always? But the truth is, they're staples, right? Rice is the most consumed grains in the world, not just Africa. Meaning that almost every family eats it. When it comes to the other grains, people have alternatives. Some of them you cannot even eat them directly until they are processed into something else. But rice, once you have it milled and bagged straight to the pots, right? You have food. So why they have to do rice is looking at the economic downturn, like you rightly mentioned, where there was no food and there's no way they can get to the farm. Obviously, something needs to be given to these guys. There has to be like a bailout system, or else we're all going to die together. The poor will kill the rich with their poverty, and not the rich helping the poor with their wealth, because that's basically where we're going. So it was necessary to have such interventions for the people. But one of the core reasons why rice was given is that it's easily accepted everywhere. And don't forget, before the government began to give rice, earlier in the late last year and earlier into this year, when this regime took over, they also shared maize. through the presidential system that went through the state governments to different person. I know about that strongly, which was those grains that the CBN kept through the Angobora program were distributed across the state. So we are giving maize before, and then it was obvious that they needed to give rice, looking at the hunger and the whole economy. But I'm glad that quite a number of things are happening with inflation rates. We trust that this progression will continue. Because it's important for those to continue. But that's basically why. The other options also, not everybody might have what it takes to process them. So you usually give them hook to go and catch the fish, but there's no river for them to catch the fish. But rather you have to give them something, because what is actually needed was for them to have immediate energy that will move them to the farm. So it's the reason why rice was given. But yes, it would be good to always have options. And then there are also peculiarity when it comes to logistics. When you bring in pulses, that's the legumes. With little water, it's damaged, it's destroyed. So you don't want to take something that before you're giving to these guys, the farmers, is already damaged. Literally, you are going to have more problems with health. So basically, that's where it was cut from. But when it comes to vegetables that can help break down, literally with every little farm, you can get vegetables and all of that. But yes, I think it's good to also think about it in terms of options, but those options are quite expensive. I might not be able to get across to everyone. So you have to look for something that can easily get to people and is easy to share. There are quite a number of thoughts around it, and then the logistics and all of that. Is why rice have always been what is shared: rice, maize. But yes, I think it's good to also have options. But yeah, and then the last thing you mentioned of why don't you pursue on availability rather than palliative? The end goal is actually availability, and I'm glad the approach that this regime took. They are not saying, oh, this palliative and then even the tax evasion for agricultural importation is forever. It's just for 150 days. So with a clear-cut mark, and the good thing is Nigeria will be able to survive this moment. From next month, right, October, we'll have grains hit the market, and we hope that transportation logistics will not become the problem, but it's expected that the price of food items should crash, should really drop drastically. And if that happens, the government have made great progress. The next that must follow is to ensure that there's a large portion of the farmland we have that must go into irrigation, so that we have all year-round production. Look at states that have good water source and can do all of this, right? Once we're able to put some of these strategies together, I think we'll be able to have availability rather than trying to solve immediate problems and not making plans for the future. So sustainability is nowhere. But it's leadership and these things, it's one step at a time. You almost cannot solve the whole problem at once. Only God can, but the little you can do it well. I think that would be my admonishment and what everyone must be focused into.
All right, in trying to solve the food problem step by step or gradually, because you say one cannot handle food problems at once. So this year's focus is on transforming food systems in a digital and climate era. Is there a way to use one to help the other? Use digital means, technology to help food systems in a climate era. Looking at some of the natural disasters and climate change issues that are affecting food availability in Africa, what is the role of technology using digital means? How can this be helped?
Okay, thank you, Blessing. I'm glad with what we've seen. With Nigeria has improved. I will use Nigeria as a case study here. In the past, you will not hear of weather forecast getting to the farmers to know, oh, there's going to be flash flood in these states. Get set, don't farm close to this. But right now, we're beginning to see that, and I know quite some other organizations in Nigeria who take out time and week-on-week basis. They send out SMSs to farmers, which is technology. Some of them have applications for those farmers who can use, where it just pops up. So they just put it from the back end and then it pops up. Oh, there's going to be rain in the next 3 days. So if you are planning to apply fertilizer, make sure it's within this time. There's going to be shortage of rain. Please don't plant, because with rain, there might be dry spell for 3 weeks. So those are the kind of options that we have technology that helps us. And I know companies like Ignitius and others, they do those climate recommendations as well. They tell you, oh, this, I've never seen this before, this is going to happen. However, so the farmers are well informed. But yes, digitalization. So digitalization, it's beautiful because there you would have hit an optimality. It means that this is the right way to farm, and then we try to digitize it. Oh, this is the planting space. This is this. Let your ridges be straight, flat, whatever it is. And then you begin to come into the regenerative agriculture where people are beginning to know far better that there's something that happens with residue incorporation. If you can maintain the soil texture over time and the structure, even the flood will not be able to take out the land. You can still maintain the organic structure of that land, which makes that land can keep producing for long. Now, this whole advisory system is very strong, and I'm glad for USAID through Mexico and other organizations. They've been pushing this across. At least I know, I think for the past 4 years, they focused on majorly 7 states before, but now I know that they're going to expand into other states. But yes, we don't have option right now. We have to find a way. Our farmers, majority of our populations are in the rural community. We have to find a way to reach them because they cannot reach us. And the easiest way to reach them is through this use of this technology. Where from the city, you can reach out to the farmer and he will do what needs to be done just by the aid of this technology. I think we don't have option. The world has moved and it has moved too fast, and we have to find a way to catch up. Now, in the agricultural space, obviously, climate is a problem. We just saw what happened in Maiduguri and other states that beyond the dam, other states are also having flash floods and everywhere. So we don't have option. We have to find a way to digitalize and also use it to control our climate system where people are advised correctly and they have the right specifications right with them, even though the professor is not there with them. So this is the advantage of technology, that this will really help. But there's a strong interplay. And if we're able to maximize on this, which is the focus of this year's forum, a lot will happen, a lot will change. Even on processing, and also even on processing, like you already mentioned, we won't have a lot of goods damaged by gloves because it's too much and they didn't have a place to store. Once you can store, we can take them through a factory system, process them into change the form, right? The value chain that can be stored for over a longer period of time. But you cannot underplay the importance of digitalization in this world, and I mean in this current world and the trend of things right now. Thank you.
Joel, you've talked about digitalization and, the conversation of climate or climate change seems to happen in certain quarters. I mean, in developed countries, there are funds that are set aside as for effects of climate change. We have funds set aside for African and developing countries because of the impact of climate change. But then, as a country, do we even understand climate change? There are certain predictions that have been given, by NIMET as regards flash floods and floodings in some states. Heavy rainfalls will be experienced, and floodings of those states would ensue. Some of those states where those farmlands, you have, farmlands that are supposed to, that have been farmed for food production, have the impacts of the flood washing away, some of those products. That means there's no harvest from all the work that has been done. Now, to put climate change in perspective, have we been able to address this issue, in order to ensure that we have food sustainability, food availability? We've talked to digitalization, but then climate change. Do we even understand what it is? Are we in tandem with what's happening globally?
Okay, so it's an interesting conversation when it comes to Nigeria and climate change. I think we know, right? We have a lot of people in the government and the private sector who have attended conferences. They're well exposed. I think we know what the impact of this climate change. But understanding is beyond knowledge, right? It means that you understand it and you're trying to either increase the impact or reduce the impact by your implementation. But we have a serious problem of willpower and what we prioritize, right? Obviously, it looks like we know what this is, but we think it's a child's play in Nigeria. So we know, these are the ones, don't farm here, this is going to happen, this is the period, but you still go to that place, the same place you heard the conversation, nobody took it to this farmer. Even sometimes it's taken to this farmers, the farmers will still take that fertilizer and say, we're going here because they don't have options of land. But these are the places where the government is supposed to come in, because just like we have the free school for children and say it's an offense if your child doesn't go to school but he's selling. But you drive through Lagos, you tell me land bridge, maybe when it's open, then you still see them selling pure water or bottled water and take away or something. But that doesn't mean that we don't know. I would have not said a lot, but implementation has been a major problem with the government. And it's not just about this administration, it's across. Even the state government, the local government, maybe a lot of things will change now with the local government autonomy that we're beginning to see, where we can pick the implementations from the local government at the ward level. So you don't think that if you don't comply, before Abuja will see you, to take 3 years. But now you know that the person who is going to be watching over you is just right at your doorstep. Maybe this will help change, but truly we have a problem of implementation. And until this it's not just about agriculture, it's everywhere, right? It's all of the sector. It looks like we only implement the things that benefits the person who needs it. But we have to look beyond us and look at the people, look at the future where we're going to, right? This is what is expected of leadership. But yes, it has to take a center stage in the conversation that happens around the leadership. So maybe these are the issues, because the food crisis, I don't see us coming out of this food crisis yet in Nigeria. Yes, a lot has happened. Input were given, like you already said. Some of those farms have gone. There's nothing that will come out, even though the fertilizer were given. For instance, in Borno State, we don't even know what have happened to those farms before the dam and after the dam. And we have other states that are completely submerged, right? And they're coming back up. But these warnings were given long time before it started. And what the government should have done to aid this is you must give these people options. If we say somebody only has a land and is close to the riverbank, and you said, oh, that land will be completely taken by flood, but the person doesn't have another option. If the government does not find a system of putting options and say, oh, for these people who have land here, we have another set of land. Because of the flood, please leave this, but let's take it somewhere else. And this is the little stipend you will do, and have a system with a community-based system of conflict management. Once you have that, then it works. But if you tell them don't farm and they don't have options, trust me, they will go back there to farm, because for them it's like they are literally committing suicide. I don't have any option to farm, and if I don't farm, I won't eat. So they take gamble. Peradventure, God will have mercy, and the rain will not fall, the flood will not come, drought will not come. So those are the things, and we have to look at them very objectively and strategically. Maybe bringing other people to play in, but you must give them options. If I tell you, if you eat rice, you are going to die, then I must have to provide beans for you, because you might not have the resources to bring beans if I know that I need you alive. So I think these are the issues that are affecting climate change. But truly, we know. But implementing, maybe I think there's some few persons who believe that this is a helps, right? This is the white man's job. But we're seeing it right in our faces. We're seeing it right in our faces. But I really hope that in Nigeria and in Africa at large, we're going to be more stringent and find a way to make sure that our policy implementation is top notch. When it's said, whatever is said from Abuja gets to Sambisa, and everybody in Sambisa knows that it's for their life and not for the government. I think this is what's a lot of things. But yes, climate change is real, and I know we know. Yeah, thank you.
Touch on the health and nutrition aspect of this forum. So, while you were talking about providing alternatives, for now, we know that some farmers actually preserve or force ripen some of the farm produce using very harmful substances. You go to the markets today and you want to buy plantain, you want to buy some fruits and even vegetables. You observe that they have been forced to ripen, and even when you buy, because sometimes there are no alternatives, you are concerned for your health. Are there alternatives to these harmful substances to help farmers preserve and even maybe ripen some of the farm produce? Are there methods that can be used that is not harmful to the health of those who consume it? And then again, let's also look at fortifying some of those farm produce that are staples with some nutrients. Some time ago, we began to see the introduction of iodized salts. Can we also have that for staples that are consumed on a daily. So when people buy some of them, and they're actually not just eating what that particular staple can offer, they also have access to some of the nutrients that they need. What is the possibility of having this?
Well, there's nothing impossible. I think that's the first. There's nothing impossible, but yes, we have to have R&D strongly in this. Yes, we have some of them, those additives. For instance, when it comes to grains, there was a time where we had from IETA they had to push the introduction of yellow maize. Actually, they included vitamin A into maize. That's what you call the yellow maize, PVA8. So that right now it's taking the center stage, but even driving that wasn't a joke, right? Bill Gates through Nestle had to push and push and push. So this has been happening, but there's a lot that also happens with adoption from the farmers because they are looking at other factors, even on sorghum and all of that. So, but yes, it's possible, and then we just find the system of incentive system that makes that the farmers can adopt this in the immediate. And also, if we deal with the processing factories and processing facilities, I think there's a lot that can happen. So at that point, find the right ratio for those additives with extra nutrients and minerals and vitamins and have them added so that when you buy one, you know that you are meeting other needs, other nutrient needs for mostly children, that are growing. So I think this is important. Now, on the part of storage, I mean, that's a field I'm very interested in. There are multiple alternatives where you store without the use of chemicals. And you have a lot of companies in the world who have gone into deep research. We have Piwa. Piwa is in Ghana. And then you have the Grain Pro doing the US, but their factories in the Philippines. They produce what we call the cocoons. And they have different storage system where you don't have to use one chemical. You don't. It's completely anaerobic. And you can keep these veggies, grains, whatever. You can keep them for as long as possible, depending on the fund amount you have and the quantity you want to keep. They have a structure that can even keep 10,000 metric tons, which is 100,000 bags of grains, and you won't have to use one chemical. And that quality can remain there for 2 years, 24 months, without changing the form or state. I've seen that. I was involved in a pilot that happened in 2012, and we kept it for 2 years to 2014. It never loses its form. I've seen it, and other companies are using it across Africa. It was expensive to bring in, but Tiwa in Ghana also picked up, and manufacturers here just beside us at Ghana, because of transportation and all of that, freight is completely reduced and all of that. So there are options, but sometimes, we're used to the old system. Actually, accepting or adopting innovation, it's a different ballgame. The extension will tell you there are theories of adoption. So you must understand that we must go through that. But I think the first thing is that the awareness. Yes, but there are options, and I'm sure at different conversations we can bring in some of these options and where people can engage. But there are options across without. There are even people when it comes to export. When you're exporting, that they completely expect completely organic. It must be completely organic. There are chemicals that won't help. WHO, I told you, these are bad. So we must have those kind of systems too that ensure that if you use the wrong thing, there's a system to check in our markets, and then once it's banned, you have lost your money. So if you make that people can implement well and not kill other families because you're trying to store your grain, but you're using the wrong thing. But yes, there are options, multiple options as well. Thank you, Blessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joel Wamba, lead consultant at Joel Solutions, an agricultural consultant. We appreciate you finding time to join us on the program, speaking to food system transformation, of course, in this era where we find ourselves. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you.
Early exchange, shaping policy. advancing development.